a great book called Cosmos and Psyche. It's by Richard Tarnas, and it's literally about all the historical events that occurred during specific planetary alignments, like Uranus and Pluto, Saturn and Pluto, or Jupiter and Neptune. Like everything has a pattern, okay? To every time, there's a season for everything, okay? There's a time to be born, a time to die, and the stars in their courses fought against Sisera, as we see in Judges 5:20. But here, if we look at just the 60s, 1963, you can see Uranus right here and Pluto in the same vicinity in Virgo. So that's a conjunction. So if Uranus was in Gemini, it would be squaring, okay? And if Uranus, it would be squaring Pluto. And if Uranus was on the opposite of Virgo and Pisces, then it would be called an opposition. That's called a hard alignments. So if we see, historically speaking, Uranus-Pluto alignments always coincide with revolutions. And we can see that the French Revolution occurred during an opposition of Uranus and Pluto right here, 1787 through 1798. And there's a huge rise in feminism during that time. And we see in 1845 and 56, the next hard alignment, Uranus-Pluto in the same spot, it was the emergence of women's suffrage movement in the U.S. And then in, let's see, and then the later opposition of Uranus-Pluto was marked by a wave of militant suffragist activity and such seminal events as the delivery of British Parliament and the women's right to vote. Okay, so these are all coinciding with very revolutionary times. This is just one chapter about only this archetype. That's all I'm going to go into in this video. I'm just giving you hard proof. And this one is the abolitionists and civil rights movement. The alignment of 1787 through 98 was the French Revolution, as well as the abolition of slavery, or the call for it, in the U.S. It's very interesting. And then in 1896 was Booker T. Washington and his call for moderate social and educational reform for blacks and organized black protests in the U.S. with Du Bois. It's very interesting. And then in the 60s, of course, there's a conjunction, as we see right here again. It's in the same spot. It brought a culmination of the movements for black civil rights, of course, with MLK and Malcolm X and all that stuff. Okay, so all these things are very indicative that the planets are affecting our psyche, history psyche, reality, our Earth psyche, basically. And then also in the 60s, we had Gandhi and his nonviolent civil disobedience philosophy, which I think America could, it would be good for America to reread that stuff. And then before all this, in the 1840s, when Uranus and Pluto were in the same spot, Henry David Thoreau wrote his The Duty of Civil Disobedience, about revolution. Okay? And then, of course, Marxist socialism, which I personally do not agree with, it was still, becoming popular, and people were thinking differently at this time. They were allowed to think differently, basically. And then the Uranus-Pluto opposition immediately prior to the French Revolution was 1643, which coincided with a wave of revolutions that swept through Europe. Okay, and you can read about it right here. In 1643, it was also it brought about emancipatory ideas and the sovereignty of people, representative government, etc., a constitution, stuff like that for these European countries. Okay, and you can just see it's like this throughout the whole book. Okay, even we go to the 1530s, the same alignments. You saw armed insurrections and the Reformation and the anarchistic revolt. Okay, so these things are happening at specific times. And then in the 1640s, China brought about the collapse of the Ming Dynasty. This is all very, solid stuff. Then we can go even to the 70s. Julius Caesar began to rise to power. And in 328, it was a political upheaval, transformed the ancient world after Alexander the Great's conquests. Okay, so as we see, this kind of stuff is all around us, and God literally said, "Look at the sun and the moon and the stars, for they will be as signs." Okay, and these are signs. All right, this is exactly what he's talking about. He's not saying the planets rule your soul. Astrologers have never said that. It just means that they're affecting reality. I don't know how else to put it, because God put them there. God has created the planets. And I don't know why believers think that just because you can look at the stars and moons and see patterns, it doesn't mean God's still not the one putting it there. He put it at that exact time and place for a reason. Okay, so you can go into this whole book and see all kinds of things. Like the scientific revolutions is Uranus-Pluto. Or let me see. That's what we were just talking about. Because Pluto is about transformation and Uranus is about revolution. And then, so like religious rebellion, once again, is Uranus Pluto in the French Revolution. And now crisis and contraction is Pluto with Saturn, okay? Because Saturn is about discipline and hard rules, okay? Anyway, this whole book goes into a lot of great stuff, and it's really good as a reference for me, basically. Um, so I can just see, oh yeah, during that time, so I don't have to actually literally use the charts. But anyway, I highly recommend this book, Cosmos and Psyche, by Richard Tarnas. I have it in as a paperback too, but it's nice to have in my pocket on my phone as well, and of course on the computer. Take it easy, y'all.